So I'm Ahmed Tikiwa, as I've been introduced there. My talk today is titled, Hey Google, help me make my open source app more fun with Gemini and Generative AI. That's me there. So the title, Hey Google, help me make my open source app more fun with Gemini and Generative AI. Now, about me, I'm a software engineer. I work at a company called Bol. I specialize in Android. I relocated to the Netherlands. I used to stay in South Africa, particularly in Cape Town. That's where I used to stay for quite a while. I'm a Google developer expert in Android. On Twitter, or X as it's called now, you can find me at Ahmed underscore Tikiwa. And the agenda for today, so basically an overview here is that this is going to be me taking you on a journey of how I managed to integrate generative AI into my Android app. Now, this particular journey had some challenges along the way, and the whole point of this talk is to walk you through those challenges, how I overcame them, and how I was actually able to eventually integrate generative AI into my app. And hopefully you'll be able to do the same too. So we'll start off with the Android app itself. I'll introduce you what the Android app is about. Then being introduced to Gemini, how I was introduced to Gemini. Attempting my first interaction with Gemini. Getting ideas from Gemini. Attempting to integrate Vertex AI into Android. Discovering Firebase and Gemini. Configuring Firebase and Gemini. Then I'm going to run through the code step by step of how I actually implemented it in Android. And then the fun part, which is the demo itself. So we'll start off with the Android app. This is my app. It's called Up Next TV Series Manager. It's been on the Google Play Store now since 2015. And I recently made it open source. It's also part of the Google Developers Dev Library. And what the Dev Library is about is just basically a website of curated projects, apps, and articles that use Google technologies. And so this app here heavily uses all the Google technologies out there. And so the idea is it's open source. You can actually contribute to it if you really want to. And yes, it has a modest download of 2,000 installations on the Play Store. And yes, I am proud of that number, even though that's not much. And what the app basically does, it's got three main screens. So it's got a dashboard screen, and the screen basically showcases a schedule. And the schedule will be shows that aired yesterday, shows that airing today, and shows that airing tomorrow. Then it has an explore screen. This explore screen is shows that are popular, that are trending, and that are most anticipated. And then it's got a screen that showcases an account screen. So the users actually have an option to add shows as favorites, and they have a screen specializing that they can actually see these favorite shows. And then also they can even search for these shows. Now, as you can see here, it's more of information. So I'm using APIs to get all this information, and I'm showing them to my users. But the idea was I wanted to actually make this app, try and make it more fun. You know, something that maybe I could have an interactive element of my app that my users can actually enjoy, apart from it just being a showcase app. So moving forward. So being introduced to Gemini, and to have an understanding of what Gemini actually is about, an understanding of what generative AI is important. So generative AI, and I asked Gemini, by the way, for this definition. I asked Gemini, hey, can you give me a layman's definition of what generative AI is about? And this is what Gemini actually said. Imagine a computer program that doesn't just follow instructions, but actually creates something new. That's what generative AI is all about. These models are like creative partners. You give them some input, like a few words or an image, and they use their knowledge to generate something entirely original, like a story, a piece of music, or even a painting. And this was through Vertex AI when I asked Gemini about this. Then, to understand Gemini, what Gemini is actually about, Gemini is Google's largest AI model that is not just capable of processing text input, but also code, audio, image, and video, thereby emphasizing its capabilities for multimodality. And that basically means that it can take multiple types of data, multiple types of input, and actually generate something from that information that you've given it. So the Gemini model comes in 3 sizes, and these have a specific intent. So you've got Ultra, Pro, and Nano. And Ultra is basically the super version of Gemini that is designed for complex processing. Then you've got Pro, which is a bit more sized down than Ultra. And then you've got Nano, which is on-device processing. So this, unlike on the Google Pixel 8, it's actually already there. On the Samsung Galaxy S24, it's already included or embedded in there as well. The idea is to also release it to other devices. But this is now the Gemini era, where you've got these different models that you can interact with in various types of applications. So I first got introduced to the capabilities, the power of Gemini at the Google Cloud Applied AI Summit that happened last year in December. And at this summit, they basically showcased different things about Gemini. So the first one was the different models that you have, so that I just mentioned now, Ultra, Nano, and Pro. And then they also talked about Gemini, how to access it using the Google AI Studio, or how to use Vertex AI for the developers. And then also they touched on the advancements and everything they're currently doing with regards to making Gemini more great. Then at this same summit, Nenshad, who is the director of product management of Vertex AI Google Cloud, he actually gave a demonstration, a live demonstration of how Gemini could actually be utilized. And this is actually what got me fascinated. So what he did was he used a fictional home rental marketplace using Vertex AI Studio and Gemini Pro Vision, which is the model. And then he prompted Gemini using a video. So he actually submitted a video to Gemini, and he asked Gemini, can you generate a description for me from this video that I've given to you? So basically a home rental description. And Gemini was able to process the video. It read the video, or rather watched it or processed it, whatever way that it does, and actually generated this information. And this actually got me interested or intrigued into what else can Gemini actually do? What can I possibly create with Gemini that I could also integrate into my applications? So I attempted my first interaction. Now, I visited the Build with Gemini website, where there are 2 options that are shown to you. So you either have get the API key using Google AI Studio, or it says they build with Vertex AI on Google Cloud. Then I tried to access the Google AI, and unfortunately I was met with a message. And this is a message that unfortunately most of us within Europe and some parts of the world are going to see. And this I actually found a bit frustrating and annoying. And so basically, it'll have a message that will say, if you reach this page after trying to open Google AI Studio, it may be because Google AI Studio is not available in your region, or you don't meet the age requirements, which is 18 plus, for access. You can learn more about the available regions below and the other requirements in the terms of service. Then there was additional information which basically said the Gemini API and Google AI Studio are available in the following countries and territories. If you're not in one of these countries or territories, try Gemini Pro in Vertex AI. And that's unfortunately where we fit in. Until Google AI is released to the rest of the world, the EU region does not have access to Google AI as yet. So I tried it out. I tried accessing Gemini via Vertex AI, and this is what the website will look like, where your starting point basically. So you're given 7 options for sending a request to Vertex AI through Gemini API. So you either have Python, Node.js, Java, Go, C#, REST, or the console. And then, but it also doesn't have any SDK integration. So this is the difference between Google AI and Vertex AI. With Google AI, you actually have a dedicated SDK for most of the platforms. Unfortunately, that's not the case here for Vertex. You have to use these different options and try and connect through it through some sort of API. So I then tried to access Vertex AI Studio, and then another hurdle, which was basically you need the Vertex AI API in order for you to be able to access Vertex AI Studio. And so this here is something I needed to set up, so I basically had to set this up. And another stumbling block, you need billing in order for you to be able to use Vertex AI API. And this is also another difference as well with regards to being able to access Google AI and Vertex AI. And because I really wanted to play with this, I ended up enabling it. And now you need to actually set up a billing account on your Google Cloud profile and then assign it to a project before you can actually enable the API. Then, another step with regards to another important information about the billing is that from May 2nd, the current billing that is there right now is going to change a little. So if you use Gemini API from a project that is billing disabled, you can still use Gemini API free of charge without the benefits available in our paid plan. Then if you use Gemini API from a project that has billing enabled, you will be subject to the pay-as-you-go pricing tier with the benefits available in our paid plan. Then this is the current pricing right now for Gemini Pro 1.0 using the Google AI. So it used to be 60 requests per minute, and now they've changed it. So you can only have 15 requests per minute on the free tier, 32,000 tokens per minute, 1,500 requests per day. And then if you're on the pay-as-you-go, it'll be slightly higher as of May 2nd. So basically in about a week or two. And then with regards to 1.5, only 2 requests per minute on the free tier, 5 requests per minute on the pay-as-you-go. And then if you're inputting data, it's free of charge on the free tier, but it'll be $7 per every 1 million tokens that you actually input into it. And there's also pricing as well for the output that it will give you. Then obviously, for us as part of the EU, this is what actually applies to us because we're using Vertex AI Studio. So if you're using Gemini Pro, 1.0 Pro, the feature, so the multimodal feature, so if you're doing image input, you'll be charged about 2 cents per every image. Video input, about 0.002 per second. Text input, less than a cent there, so 0.00125 per every 1,000 characters. And this is the one I'm actually currently using. We currently don't really have access to Gemini 1.5 Pro as yet. And yeah, so I set up the billing account just so that I could actually start using this. And this is what you will see there when it's finally enabled, status enabled on your Google Cloud profile. Then the idea now was like, okay, now I've set up Vertex AI. Google, or Gemini rather, can you give me some ideas? I've got this open source app that does this. Please, can you give me some information? And so this is what the UI actually looks like on Vertex AI Studio. So on the left there, you've got different options, including how to change the type of interaction. So if you want multimodal or you just want text input, multimodal basically means you're doing text and video or text and images, and giving it to Gemini and it will process it. On the right-hand side there, at the top there, you can choose the type of model that you want, the region. In my case there, I picked the Netherlands, where I'm currently residing. And then the temperature, which is basically how random you want the results to come, or how true and so forth that you want them to be set up. And then the area there in the middle, that's where you put the prompt, that's where you put the instruction to Gemini, and Gemini will generate a response, and it will be below there once you click submit. So this was my first interaction. I said, I have an Android app that I built. It has a screen that displays a schedule of TV shows that aired the previous day, the next day, and the current day. There's another screen that displays the most popular TV shows, the most anticipated TV shows, and the current trending TV shows. I want to integrate generative AI models into the Android app, but need ideas. And surprisingly, Gemini actually gave me some really good ideas that I feel I could actually make use of. Now, the first idea was, this is how it actually generated the response there. And then the first idea was a character and story creation feature. And this I actually found intriguing, but I thought, okay, this really doesn't really give me the the interactiveness that I'm currently looking for. I want a bit more. But with this one, it said, users can create their own TV shows with the help of a generative AI for the storylines and characters, potential for choose your own ending, adventures with the help of Gen AI. Then the second one is personalized recommendations. So personalized TV show recommendations based on user preferences, watch history, and interactions with the app. Then Gen AI suggestions based on data analysis, users' unique interests. And the other idea was similar shows, having an enhanced description within the show detail screen. So use Gen AI to generate a list of similar shows, TV shows, to the user that they're currently viewing, and then use Gen AI to provide information on the show's overall quality, critical reception, audience reaction. So Gemini will be able to get all this information for you and then bring it in and actually display it. And I thought, okay, this is nice. These are all features I actually think I will add in future, but not right yet. Then it gave me this idea. Use Gen AI to generate questions and answers, challenge users' knowledge, entertain. And that's the part that got me there, because I wanted to be able to entertain my users in some way or the other. Then fun, engaging, and promotes discovery and new content exploration. And I thought this is probably the idea that I'm going to start with. So I started on this, honing this idea of trying to build a quiz game within my app. So my first idea was, okay, I've got a show detail screen, and the user can click on a show, and then what if, when they're viewing a show, there'll be a quiz button of some sort for that particular show. I would then send the image information and the name of the show to Gemini and say, Gemini, can you give me a quiz? And then the user can actually have a quiz for that show that they're viewing. So that was the idea that I initially had. So I said, can you generate a trivia quiz from the poster below? The response needs to be in JSON format and contain the questions and answers for each show in multiple choice. And then I gave it that image, which is a TV show called Echo, which was on Disney+. And then it actually responded with a quiz in this format, in JSON format. And this was actually promising because I thought, nice. It correctly identified the TV show that I gave it. As you can see, the questions, they relate to that TV show. So it actually got it right, which gave me hope that I might be able to actually build this feature. Then I attempted to now integrate Vertex AI into my Android app. And this is where most of the other challenges also came as well. Now, like I said, the Google AI has got SDK integrations for the other platforms. Unfortunately, that's not the case right now with Vertex AI. So for you to be able to try and integrate it, there are the options there at the top there. When you click on Get Code, you either have Python, Node.js, Java, curl. Then the idea is to try and copy and paste whatever it gives you there on the right-hand side and then try and integrate it. It's unfortunate that there isn't Kotlin support, because that is what we use on Android as the first preference, but it only has Java support. And then also it wants you to set up cloud authentication and so forth, which for me, I found it a bit tricky because I'm not a cloud engineer. But I tried anyway. And this is the difference now with Google AI. With Google AI, these are the SDKs that you have available. You've got an SDK for Python, Android, Web, iOS, Go, Node, Dart, REST API, migrate from Palm, and you can also build it on the Google Cloud. So these are all prepackaged options that you have on Google AI, which we don't have available to us as yet as part of the EU. So I tried to connect to Vertex AI. So this was my issue. I'm trying from my Android app using that code that it provided. I tried to tweak it as much as possible. I just could not get past the authentication part. It just kept failing. And this was actually frustrating. But I tried searching for answers. I just couldn't get the answer that I was looking for. But then I stumbled upon something else. Firebase actually uses Gemini. And so I came across this in my search. And I discovered that Firebase is a Gemini solution through the use of Firebase extensions. And then in this video, Rosario Fernandez, who's a Firebase DevRel, he provides a walkthrough on how to connect to Gemini through a Firebase function you can install in your Firebase project. So there are a variety of extensions that you can add to a Firebase project through this extensions hub. Then you have this particular function there called multimodal task with Gemini API. And as you can see, there are other options as well. You can also build a chatbot with Gemini, but my case there was to try and interact with it using this multimodal approach. So that extension there is the one that I felt might actually fulfill the needs that I was looking for. And so what a cloud function is, or rather Firebase cloud function is, it's basically a serverless framework that lets you automatically run backend code in response to events triggered by background events. So HTTP requests, the admin SDK, or cloud scheduler jobs. Your JavaScript, TypeScript, or Python code is stored on Google Cloud infrastructure and runs in a managed environment. Therefore, there's no need to manage or scale your own servers. Then this is how it will typically run on Firestore. So basically, this cloud function uses Firestore, which is one of the services that is part of Firebase. So you basically upload what is called a collection, and then within a collection, you've got a document. And whenever this document is uploaded or changes are made to it, there's an interaction that happens. And it triggers an interaction with Google Cloud on your behalf, does some stuff with Google Cloud, brings back the information, and then your document is then updated in real time here in Firestore. So this is an overview of how that will actually work. So Firebase or Firestore will then detect whether there's an event that happens. So a document will be updated and so forth. Then it will interact with Google AI or Vertex AI, depending on which one you have access to. Then it will interact with Gemini, get the information you require, bring back that information, and then bring it back to the document there. And then your document will get updated with the information. So this is how you then configure this Firebase function and on your Firebase console. So the first part is to go to the extensions hub, like I mentioned previously, and then you will see this option there, install in Firebase console. And this particular function was written by the Google Cloud team, and it performs multimodal generative tasks on text and images, customizable with prompt engineering using Gemini models and Firestore. Then your first step is basically now that you need to install the extension. Unfortunately, there might be an instance where you will be required to set up billing because this extension requires that you use the Blaze plan instead of the Spark plan. So the Spark plan is the free plan, but the Blaze plan is the one where you kind of have a pay-as-you-go option. The good thing about this is that you will only get paid if you exceed the threshold. So this particular Firestore instance that you're then going to be running, you won't get charged for it as long as you don't exceed 1 gig in total of this, or like 10 gigs of space per month, or 20,000 writes per day, or 50,000 reads per day. In my case, I will barely even touch that number, so this was fine. So this day, I just needed to just accept it and upgrade my project to the Blaze plan. And then the step 2 is basically enabling certain APIs. In my case, or rather in our case, because we're in the EU, we need to use Vertex AI API. So that's an option that you select there. And then there are other resources that it'll need to create or update. So in this case, it's generate text, because that allows it to be able to generate the text for you and send it as a prompt to Gemini on your behalf. And then, of course, if you're using the Google Cloud API, then you have to configure an API key. So that's also part of the secret manager that it will then try and install. Then the installation will take about 3 to 5 minutes. And then after that, you will then have access to this extension function. And so this is what it will then look like. You will then need to configure it a bit further once it's now installed. There are some parameters, about 7 or 8 of them, that you'll need to configure. Some of them are optional. And I'll walk you through. So the first one is you need to choose the provider, if it's going to be Vertex AI or Google AI. You then need to choose a model. In my case, either Pro or Vision, if you're not going to be passing images or just text. You then need to provide an API key if you're using Google AI. You provide a path. This can be anything. You can call it anything. I call mine generate. Then the prompt, which will be the instruction that will be sent to Gemini on your behalf. I will show you in a sec what my prompt looks like. And then an image field, if you're passing any image data to Gemini. Then the output, again, anything, you can call it anything. I called it output, which is basically the response, where when Gemini responds with something, and then in Firestore, it's going to try and store this information somewhere. This is where it's going to reside. And then the cloud functions location. This is where the server is going to be located for your function itself. Unfortunately, you can't change this after you install it. I think you might have to remove the extension and then reinstall it again if you want to change the location. But these are the different parameters that you need to set up. Then, this was my prompt. I said, generate a trivia quiz for instructions. So this is basically a placeholder. You can then pass it dynamic data through this way. The response needs to be in JSON format and contain the questions and answers for each show in multiple choice, as well as a publicly accessible URL of the show's poster image. The JSON structure needs to be valid and can be correctly passed. Ensure all brackets of the JSON output are closed correctly. This is important. I actually got instances where the JSON was not closed. And then I gave it an example of what I needed to be the structure. Then there was an instance where I was giving it image data, and then it actually failed to give me back the correct information. And this was one of the other challenges that I experienced with this, with trying to get to this point where I have this thing in my app. So what I did was you can pass it an image, which is basically a Google Cloud path, and then it sends off that information, and then it responds with the information. But the problem was, whatever image I was giving it, Gemini was responding with something random. So I'd give it a TV show poster, and then it told me there were 10 people that were sitting on a bench, that type of thing, it was just weird. So I decided to let go of this idea of trying to send off a poster, but instead pivot my idea and actually say, look, Gemini, can you give me a quiz for 5 random TV shows or 10 random TV shows? So I had to change my idea because of this. I might maybe look at it in future, maybe if they fix it and so forth, but right now, this is what I'm currently doing. So the code, the fun part. So the quiz code is structured in this way. So you basically have got the UI layer, which is in my case, I've got a composable code trivia screen. Everything, by the way, in this app is composed. I'm using Jetpack Compose all the way. There is no XML that I'm using. And then I've got a view model, and then I've got a exposing state, trivia screen UI state, which the trivia view model handles. Then I've got the data layer, which is my repository. And then this repository interacts with Firestore through the Firebase SDK. And then Firebase does this thing where it gets the information and then brings it back, and my repository listens or responds to that information, sends it off to the view model through flows. And then, so these are the dependencies that I had to install. So I basically just had to add Firestore, and then I added Lottie just to basically make my app fun with some animations. So these are all the dependencies I had to add. And then my repository looks like this. So I have a function called getTrivia, which returns a flow, and I encapsulated it in a class called result. And this will basically either be loading, success, or error, that type of thing. And then it will return trivia question. And then within this function here, I'm then trying to map the information I get from Firestore. Because it's in JSON format, I then need to make it into an object, a data class that I can use. So I'm using JSON to actually do that. So I'm setting that up. And then this is how you interact with Firestore to get that collection. So Firebase Firestore collection, and then the document part. So what that will do is it will then try and upload a document for me in Firestore. And then Firestore will then try and interact with Gemini on my behalf and then bring back the information. And then once I get that information, I'm then mapping it or setting that to a data class that I've now set there. And in this case, this is my request structure. And my request will basically look like this, where I have the instruction, the image, the output, and the status. Now, the top two, the instruction and the image, these are the two that I'm actually sending off to Firestore on my behalf. The output and the status are what Firebase is going to update for me. So in that case, the image is null, and my instruction is 5 random TV shows. Then the request status, whether it has been completed, the start time, the state, the update time. So when it was completed, that's important for me because it can either be processing or completed. And then I then have an enum that basically maps these two values. Then in my, continuing on in my repository, I have this function here. It's an extension function called getFirestore data as flow, which returns a query snapshot as a flow. And then I try and map that information there into one of the other success, loading or error and so forth. And then stepping into that function, so this is what it does there. It just basically maps what Firestore is returning into an object that I will then define on my side. So what it does is it will return a callback flow. It will try to send us immediately when it's loading, result loading. And then I add a snapshot listener. And this basically is the part where I want to make sure that things are going right. I can actually see that something is happening. If there's an error, I'll then post that error and set it off as an error. And then there are two states, as I mentioned, processing and completed. And I then listen to those statuses there. So if the document is processing, this is a function I created, then try to send loading. But if it's success, then it means it's now finished, so you can now display the information there. And then the Firestore process will actually look like this. So first, the output will be null, and then while Gemini is busy doing its thing, the output will get updated in real time. And this is how the JSON will then look like. So Gemini will get that information, Firestore will then get it and then display it there and update your document for you. Then I then map that response to an object, that same object, Gemini multimodal request. I then pass that response there to my view model, and then my view model will then react on that and then try and create a state object. So my view model basically does this init where it does get trivia, which is trying to call the repository, say, hey, repository, give me the information that I need. It will then get that information and map it. So the first part is if it's loading, it will then pass a loading information state. And then if it's success, it will then try and get all the information about the questions, the next question, the previous question, and so forth. And then I wrote a function there that will determine the next question. So I basically just try and step through all the information that is there within the object itself, and then try and determine which question is supposed to be next. And then if there isn't any next question, it will just say it's reached the end, and so forth. And then still carrying on, this is the UI state that I will then pass on to the composable, and then the composable will then respond to that information. So this is how the composable looks like. So it basically has this trivia screen which contains a box with various composables set up there. It's listening to the view model using the state there. And then this is how the loading screen will look like. So the animation that I mentioned there. So I'll display this animation while Gemini is busy doing its thing. And then I will then have a complete screen, which will be there to display success. And then I'll have a question. So this is how the question will look like with the options. If it's green, it's correct. If it's red, you got it wrong. And then the fun part, which is the demo. And this is how it will look like. So you click there, it will load. And then the question, what is the name of the documentary crew that films the employees at the office? And then you go through the different questions there. And then once you're actually done, you get that final success loading screen that will tell you how many questions you actually got correct, or if you got any wrong. And that is it. These are the resources. If you want to see everything that I've now gone through within this slide, I had to rush just a little bit at the end there because I was running out of time. The slides will be available if you want them. And Tikiwa.
Thank you, Ahmed. And now is the time for some questions, please, in the Slido. So, first question. Sorry for off topic. Where did you get those awesome stickers you have on your laptop?
I got them from all over, different conferences that I've gone to. But I actually do have some stickers if anyone wants. Yes, you can feel free to come and get. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, visit Ahmed in Speaker's Corner. He can give you some stickers. How does Gemini API output compare to OpenAI? In particular, is the JSON output consistent? Is there some equivalent to OpenAI tools, function calling?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually haven't tested out OpenAI. I haven't tried to find out whether it's good at outputting the JSON. It probably might be similar. and you might need to do some what is called prompt engineering in order for you to get the type of output that you actually want. So like in my case where I explicitly told it I need it in this structure, I think I seem to see a pattern with most of these language models that you need to kind of give it a structure in order for it to output it the way that you want it. I know that in Gemini 1.5 Pro, which is the new one, they actually have a JSON mode that now comes native. So it's now a support now for developers. If you really want JSON, you can actually have it natively as part of 1.5 Pro. Unfortunately, that's just the one with a bit more billing attached to it. Yeah.
Okay, and last question is mine. I was curious. So why are you using Firestore? Because that's for like storing data. Can you use HTTP calling function, which is just passing through?
Yes. So the part that I was touching on there. So with Google AI, you can just integrate an SDK, right? And then you just make a call within your SDK function, and then it will make a request for you. With Vertex AI, you have to make an API call some way or the other. So either using REST API or the Java code and so forth. And then with regards to Firestore, the idea is the way they built this function is based on document uploads. So if you then upload a document with some sort of fields defined in it, so you say like an instruction, I think in the background it kind of mimics an HTTP request that it will then send it off to Vertex AI on your behalf or Google AI and then get information to you. But the only way to interact with this function is through Firestore.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was easier to set up because it's in the extensions, right?
Yes.
So it's already made for you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all questions. You can continue talking with the speaker in the speakers corner, which is back there, and we will now have a last break, 10-minute break before the last talk in this room. You can also rate the speaker on Slido. The poll should be open now. And the last talk in this room will be from Michal Mátl about design system at Škoda Auto. See you in 10 minutes.
Can I just take a selfie with them?
Yeah, sure.